What's up guys, my name is B-Ran. Welcome to a new video. Now, I recently watched through Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I went from season 1 to season 7 in probably about a month's time, and I got fully addicted to it. So when I was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I started realizing that I'd seen some of this stuff before, but where had I seen it? Well, I'd seen it in Rick and Morty. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Rick and Morty directly ripped off Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm just saying that there's a few things in Rick and Morty that appear in Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well. So I'm going to start off with the first one, which is praying mantis creatures.
Kiss me. Kiss me. You going to say one thing? Help!
Now, the praying mantis creatures, they appear in Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the very first season. Now, the episode is called Teacher's Pet, and basically Xander Harris ends up getting into a bit of a relationship. Well, actually he gets flirted with. He doesn't actually get into a relationship with her, but his teacher in high school, because the first couple of seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer are all set in the high school years of the main characters, and so Xander ends up getting courted by his teacher.
I think you meant pollination for number 14. I'll see you here after school.
who ends up actually being a praying mantis insect creature.
Would you like to touch me with those hands?
Your hands are really serrated. Oh, well, that martini, I really think I have to...
Then you go and watch Rick and Morty.
Take me to Morty.
Now, admittedly, the praying mantis creatures are quite different in both shows, but there is a common link. They both want to have sex with people.
I love him so much, I want to make love to him and then eat his head.
I love him more than you do, Harold.
You wish, you stupid bitch!
Morty's mine!
Morty's mine!
I think we can all agree that having humanoid praying mantis creatures trying to have sex with you is probably not the best situation to be in. Now, the second thing that happens in Buffy the Vampire Slayer that also happens in Rick and Morty is a love spell, okay? Now, in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's a spell.
Find the heart of Xander's beloved. May she neither rest nor sleep until she submits to his will only. Diana, bring about this love and bless it. Blow out the candle now.
In Rick and Morty, it's a potion.
All right, Morty, whoever you smear this stuff on will fall in love with you. And only you, forever. Are you happy now, Morty?
Heck yeah! Thank you, Grandpa Rick. Hey, there's no dangers or anything or side effects, right?
Whoa, what am I, a hack? Go nuts, Morty. It's foolproof. Unless she has the flu.
So in the same episode with the praying mantis creatures in Rick and Morty, so basically, if you guys haven't seen the episode, Morty wants to get his school crush to essentially date him, and he wants Rick to create a love potion, and he does create a love potion, but it ends up making the entire school fall in love with Morty thanks to a flu epidemic, which then infects the rest of the world, meaning everybody wants a piece of Morty.
Oh, crap!
Morty, come on, we gotta get you out of here. You're not gonna believe this because it usually never happens, but I made a mistake.
But in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Xander Harris, once again, he basically does a love spell which backfires and makes all the girls in the school, every single one of them, want a bit of Xander Harris.
We got not all the time in the world, woo, but we got a lot. Now there is much more than a ghost of a chance. We can make it right this time, 'cause you got.
In Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's a love spell. That goes terribly wrong. And as you can see, everybody wants a piece of Xander Harris. But now let's go forward to the next link, which is Mr. Poopy Butthole and Jonathan. Now both Jonathan from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Mr. Poopy Butthole from Rick and Morty temporarily invade the opening credits of their TV shows for one episode.
Ooh-wee! Whatever you want, Rick, we're here to help!
Well, in Rick and Morty, there is an episode where Mr. Poopy Butthole makes his first appearance, and in this episode, Mr. Poopy Butthole invades the opening credits of the Rick and Morty episode. There's an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer entitled Superstar, where Jonathan actually he does the same thing as Mr. Poopy Butthole. So he actually casts a spell on the entire the entire world, making Jonathan extremely important. So what this means is the episode starts off and Jonathan is in the opening intro to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So it's in the same vein as Mr. Poopy Butthole. He invades the intro. And it turns out that he did actually cast a spell onto the whole world, essentially, which does get broken by the end of the episode, and it all reverts back to normal. Jonathan ends up being a villain later on in the series, so maybe, who knows, maybe Mr. Poopy Butthole is gonna end up being a villain in Rick and Morty, which I think would be pretty damn cool if he ended up being the villain. But now let's talk about Toxic Morty and Toxic Rick. So in season 3, the latest season of Rick and Morty, essentially in the episode, Rick and Morty go to a therapy, a space therapy session, and they end up de-stressing themselves. So they want to relax and they want to get rid of all the stress in their lives. But what it ends up doing is it ends up taking all the toxic characteristics of Rick and Morty out of them. So it traps, essentially splits their personalities into 2.
What is your problem? Oh, I had all my problems removed. My entitlement, my narcissism, my crippling loneliness, my irrational attachments. They must be somewhere. They ain't over here, bro.
This actually happens in Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well. See, there's this guy trying to kill Buffy, and he ends up blasting Xander Harris with this magical weapon.
Take cover! Big guy! Kick her ass! Oh, very nice! I was on your side! Watch out!
And ends up splitting Xander into 2. So one version of Xander Harris is this like pathetic, cowardly person.
Come on, Buffy.
Hello?
And the other half is this really like uptight, very precise, but ultimately very boring version of himself.
The demon with the creepy stick thing.
Toth.
It's gotta be. He hit Xander with that blast, and somehow it allowed him to take Xander's form.
I don't know about you guys, but if my personality was split in half, I think we'd probably kill each other by the end of the day. Now, if I had to make a guess, I would say that Dan Harmon, Justin Roiland, or somebody on the writing team at Rick and Morty was heavily inspired by Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Maybe they're all fans of the show. Look, thank you so much, guys, for watching through this video. Hopefully you agreed with some of this, and I'm not just a madman connecting the dots. And by the way, one of my favorite episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer was the musical episode, so I'll see you next time. Well, thanks for getting to the end of the video, guys. If you liked this video, make sure you actually click that like button, subscribe to my channel, go watch my old videos. They're terrible videos, but go ahead and watch them. They're trash, they're just pure trash. Go get some trash in ya.